Bam! In real life. Hello everyone. I thought I'll do the stream in English today. It might help more people. It's a very niche thing to do, I think. At least when I search on it for it on YouTube. The most I find is a few 1,000 watches using building a multi-tenant system, which I'm about to do for research. I will do it using the OrchardCore framework, which is implemented by Microsoft. As I understand it, it's used for CMS to create websites for multiple tenants. But there are two parts of Orchard, which is one is the core, one is the CMS part, and we'll only use core to build our own multi-tenant system. I'll put this on the second screen. I'll actually put this also on the second screen. This here. So basically, I'll have a chill, relaxed stream, and do the video tutorial. I'll turn up a little background music. Some no copyright sound playlist. From Spotify. Okay, let's start with the video. Actually, the first thing, I'll put it here simply.
So let's see how it works concretely if you want to use OrchardCore framework to build modular applications. So I will switch to Visual Studio, and I have a solution ready with a web application that is based on the empty template in Visual Studio.
I have created exactly the same thing.
This empty template has a startup class that has a configure method that will just return hello world from the home endpoint in a middleware. Okay, so if I run this app, very simple. It will just output hello world like this. Now, I want to extend this application with a separate module. So here I have a class library that I called e-commerce. This is a simple SDK web class library that I make as a library. Plus extend this application with a separate module.
That works.
So here I have a class library that I called e-commerce. This is a simple SDK web class library that I make as a...
Let's add that here. Class library. E-commerce. I'll name it the same thing, although the use case will be different, just so I know what I'm looking at. It's just for testing anyway.
The library, you're targeting the netcore.
I wanted to have it in the same solution. I'm an idiot. I haven't used Visual Studio for a long time. I've been using JetBrains stuff. Rider, C# Rider. Let's open here. Open this back again. And then I'm going to delete what we just created. Done. Now we do here add new project. Class. Library. Although in the video it has a different logo. Looks like a web project. It is. So let's delete that. And add new project. There we are. That.
target, and it has a startup like this empty app startup. So a startup class like any ASP.NET Core app with a configure method that will map a specific endpoint to responding e-commerce the same way. So I want to be able to make that part of my application. So when using OrchardCore framework to do that, we will need to convert this app into a modular app host and this class library to a module. To do that, we will use NuGet packages, which are nuget.org and are made for ASP.NET Core 3.0. So here, I will go manage my NuGet packages and browse for nuget.org packages. And because this is the host application, I will import the OrchardCore application targets package, which will convert my application to a modular host application.
Interesting.
So this is done. And this application, this class library, I will do the same thing, managing.
Whatever. Nope. Actually, no. just do this. Ah. I think that's how I did it. Right.
You get packages, sorry.
A little bit of
This is
hacking.
done. To do that, we will use NuGet and this class library to a module. To do that, we will need to convert this app into any target case that I call the module. So here I have a class library that I called e-commerce. This is a simple SDK Web Core App 3.0 empty app startup. So a startup class like this empty app startup. So a startup class like any
Don't need the cheat. Be gone. Looks right, although it's not clean what I did. I should have created it the right way as they did, but I have no idea how they did, so let's see if that works. Probably have different launch settings. How the fuck do they? I have no idea.
like
Let's see how
empty
how
app
far we get.
startup. So a startup class like any ASP.NET Core app with a configure method that will map a specific endpoint to responding to my application. Class library get.org or NuGet made for ASP.NET Core 3.0. So here, I will go manage my NuGet packages.
So let's add that as well.
And browse for NuGet.org packages. And because this is the host application, I will import the OrchardCore application targets package. Which will convert my application to a modular host application. So this is done, and this application, this class library, sorry, I will do the same thing, manage NuGet packages, but this time, instead of the application target, I will use OrchardCore.module target. So adding a NuGet package, oh, sorry, not this tab, but the browse tab. This is the package I want, and I will install this package. So now each of the components are ready, but in my startup.
Okay, let's see how. Oh. Okay, done. And here we do the same. What was it? Module targets. Install. Okay.
So now each of the components are ready, but in my startup, I will need to use the services provided by OrchardCore. So I will do services dot add OrchardCore. Oops, why did I break? Because I broke that. Add OrchardCore, and in the middleware, I will use the OrchardCore middleware. So my application is ready to host modules. This class library is a module, and my services are configured to accept modules. OrchardCore. Middleware. So my application is ready to host modules. This class library is a module, and my services are configured to accept modules. If I run this app again,
what the fuck did you say?
My apps are configured to accept modules. If I run this app again, so my application is ready to host
Looks right.
modules. This class library is a module, and my service host modules. This class library is a module, and my services are configured to accept modules. If I run this app again, you will see that it should not work. So if I try to access the e-commerce endpoint, it doesn't work because I
obviously. Because it's not connected.
need to tell my application to use this module. And to do that, we just add a reference to this project. And with that, the services will find to this project. And with that, the services will find this package as a module and plug all the startup from these modules into my host application. And so by doing e-commerce, I have my endpoint working in my host application. So now you see how we can create a modular host application and a module. Now the goal of modules is to be reusable. It's one of the goals. So let's see if I can create another app and reuse this module. So to do that, I will create a new project that will be a core web application. And I will base it this time with a more complex example on a web application. So web application in ASP.NET will configure Razor pages from the ASP.NET MVC framework. So I will say create. And I have this web application that will make the main application. Just run it to see that it works correctly. And I have a more complex app than my empty app, which contains a Razor page, which is defined as a home page. So let's add this module to this app. And the same way.
Let's do the new project. I've never done Blazor. I'd like to use a Blazor template, Blazor app, web application, create WebAssembly or server rendered. Not that it matters for this tutorial, but what would I like to test? Let's test WebAssembly. I'm curious about the speed of the first time loading. What's the difference? How would it be hosted otherwise? With the ES? I don't know. Whatever. Bam. Let's start it. See how it looks. What did it start? The wrong one. Looks nicer.
We did earlier. I will add the NuGet package to the new application.
Okay.
But this one will be an MVC one because it will understand all the MVC concepts to make it modular. And
okay. Let's try that, whatever that means.
then with that, I can do the same thing as user app to remove address of pages concepts to make it modular. And then with that, I can do the same.
I think that was exactly the checkbox. Hey, add new project, replace app. That's right. Application. Next. Great. Oh God. Well. Generated 3 projects. Client server. So and shared. Which is the model. Okay. Makes sense. Ah, yeah, I understand. That's probably that's WebAssembly probably only when it's compiled. What happens? I'm curious now. If I make it server rendered. Don't save. Deleting the folder as well. Adding a new project. Another Blazor app, and this time application. This time we'll use server app. Ah, I see. Ah, that's also nice. Okay, yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. I've never done this, but it makes sense. When it's a WebAssembly project, that it has a separate project. So, for simplicity, let's go with the server rendered version. And then he did this. But made it MVC. What the fuck am I? There's a tab. Yesterday I installed Visual Studio, so nothing like this is set up. Is it free? It's 2. The fuck? Whatever. It's just for testing.
As user app to remove address to the new application. But this one will be an MVC one because it will understand all the MVC concepts to make it modular. And then with that, I can do the same thing as user app to remove address of pages. But with a twist by saying add MVC.
How does that work? Do I need to remove both? So the singleton is only for the example. Let's remove all of that.
To support the services for MVC, which will replace the address or pages, it's included there. And also here, I don't need authorization, I don't need this call. I will do that by just calling use, place the address or pages, it's included there. And also here, I don't need authorization.
We didn't check the box, so we don't have authorization.
I don't need this.
And he removed the endpoints. Routing static files, that's the same.
Call. I will do that by just calling use OrchardCore the same way. So same thing with 2 lines of code and 1 package. I made OrchardCore the same way.
Okay.
So same thing with 2 lines of code and 1 package. I made this app modular host application, and I will reference the module e-commerce that we
dependencies, e-commerce
created earlier and was working in a standard web app. Run the application. Still working.
I'm curious if it's still working, although this was the wrong app. Yeah, we need to start web application. Very curious if that still works. Wow! Ha! So the routes are gone, which makes sense since I removed them. Okay, but it runs. That's cool. Even though I removed, I replaced this part here.
But now I can access the endpoints.
Oh, really? I mean, I hope so. I'm assuming that works too. Yes.
Defined in my module. So the nice thing here is that same module is used from an empty app that doesn't know about MVC, or this app that knows about MVC. And this is a simple module. But what if I want to create a module that has more things to provide? In this case, because I'm working with MVC, we want to create a module that will contain some MVC concepts. So let's try to do that. I will add an existing project that I have pre-created before, which is called Web API because it contains some Web API. So this is a web project that is a library, and that references the module targets, so it's a module. But like the e-commerce module, it has a startup which is empty, does nothing, though it provides a controller. This is the weather forecast controller from the default template for I think the API project template. And this one is a standard MVC controller that is routed to the controller name, so this should be weather forecast, and that will return on any get a list of forecast as a get call into JSON results. Okay, so this is a module. So I just need to reference it from my host application, which is the MVC host with Web API, and now this app is made of its own startup and 2 different other modules, the e-commerce modules and the Web API module. And this one provides the weather forecast API. So if I run my app, still working, and I go to weather forecast, I see that it returns the JSON. and the result is coming from my external module.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first step. We can have web APIs.
That makes me
using
think,
the
well, how do
routing
you...
system, the endpoint routing
Like at
system
first-
from ASP.NET Core MVC.
At first thought I was like, so now you can have multiple tenants through multiple projects, but why do... Currently I'm asking myself, why do I need multiple projects? I mean, in regards to multi-tenancy, of course I need it for dependency injection and reversal of whatever that was called.
Using the
In English.
routing system, the endpoint routing system from ASP.NET Core MVC.
Inversion of control.
From external modules. And you can see that you can extend your applications just by referencing an existing module. So let's go a step further and add more components to this module. So here we just have a web API controller. But what if I want view controller, or a controller that will return a view? So I will add a new class. Wait, I will copy paste this class. And I will call it home controller. And remove all the things here.
Okay.
Inherit from controller. Call it home controller. And simply have an index method. That will return a view.
Okay.
And this view that I will create in the home folder to match the controller. New item. I want a razor view. Add. And here I will just say hello from home. Okay? So I have a home controller, and the default route for a controller will be the name of the controller and the action. And I won't change the route for now, just to show you how it works. And there will be 2 steps to make it work correctly. I run the app. I don't change anything, I just change my module, but I don't change the app. And here, to access this controller, I will do web API /home/index. And you see here, hello from home. So the first thing you notice is that it's not home/index like on a standard app. It's web API /home/index. Because the default convention for modules, controllers, and routes is to prefix them with the module name, just to prevent collisions
But
from
the
it.
API wasn't the
But
name,
I
right?
could very
yeah, it was,
easily
okay.
add a custom route, like
Yeah.
my home, or even a convention one. But okay, let's try with my home and run it again.
So there's a multi-tenancy.
And access the same thing. So you see here, you can also redefine from a module how you want to expose it. And I could also have done it from the host app to customize each module's route for the specific application. Now, the next thing you will notice is that this view doesn't use the layout of the host application. This is just because we need to say it in every view. So in the host application, the views which are razor pages here are using a view start that will set the layout to the shared layout in this host application. So if I take this code and put it in my view or in a view start under the views folder of the module, I will get the same result. So by doing that and running the application, I get the same layout as the host application, but from a view which is in and running the application.
Yeah, makes sense.
A view start under the views folder of the module, which is in here is that views application differently. take it dynamically for each application. We do add folder, page, and page. So and the last,
layout.
so I will create an ASP.NET add.
That's
I
not what I
will
want
put
to know.
some kittens. Add the root, exactly the same way I will build an ASP.NET add, and in this folder, I have kitten. Put a kitten in my way for conditions, like kinds of things we can also serve, and that's what is important in this kind of modules, because then it's really like a micro application, a mini section of your site, of your web app. The next step of reusing a module is to publishing it and to share it across different services, or we will use a NuGet package. If I do that, Visual Studio will complain that the project cannot be packaged because packaging has been disabled to my project. I will add that tag and also any conflict, and doing that, been creating. And is this folder. Let me show you. I configured this folder here. My NuGet packages is pointing to a local break to check here. This is my package. So I will remove the reference from the project itself. Okay. And let's run the application just to be sure that I can't act anymore, but I will install this package and run it again. And if I go to my home, kittens, any other package available again. And if I go to the package one using it for it is to make modular are made of tens, hundreds of, understand how easy it is to make modular apps. Not mentioning that you could have apps that are made of tens, hundreds of different modules to build the main app you want. Now, let's go back to the slides, because I want to talk about multi-tenant application.
Yeah, finally.
So the multi-tenant application is an application that will be deployed once, but will be able to host as many or as much as you can, as many websites with a single deployment. Typically, that's what we call software as a service, when you deploy once, but you can provision as many sites for each customer or as many services. So a single application can host multiple isolated websites. A very good example for that is WordPress.com. When you go to WordPress.com, you can create a new blog, a new website. You just type your name, your email, your credit card information, and you get a new site under either a prefix like Sebastian Ross blog, or a domain if you pay to own the domain and to register it on WordPress.com. But in terms of hosting, WordPress didn't
PHP.
install a new website somewhere. They just add a new entry in their service to provide you with the same service, but in isolation from the other customers. So that's what is software as a service, and that's what a multi-tenant application is. So how do you do that with ASP.NET? Well, you will use OrchardCore also. And that's why we have modularity in OrchardCore to be able to provide software as a service where every tenant can have different sets of modules which are deployed with your application. So this is an example I mentioned. A tenant can be accessed through different domains, which will all point to the same servers, but the server, the application, will route based on a domain or based on a prefix of each customer to the set of data and configuration that the tenant represents. Because each tenant is isolated, meaning each tenant has different services, middleware, and options in terms of ASP.NET services, middleware, and options. Each tenant can have different data, like configuration, such as connection string, or different data as in the database, like different set of users.
So for information, multi-tenant app requires tenant resolution, configuration per tenant, and data isolation, which is exactly resolution is here, isolation, and configuration. The three main things about multi-tenancy.
even though it's provided by the same app. And then you can isolate the tenant in terms of security. For instance, each tenant could have its own authentication logic, like let's use integrated authentication or Google authentication, and so on. The cookies should not cross the boundaries of the tenant. And also maybe you want a tenant to have different features than the other. Like maybe I want a tenant to have my web API feature or my e-commerce feature, or both of them based on what they want to pay for. But I deploy once with all these modules, and I can allow or disallow every feature for each tenant. So how do you do that with OrchardCore? Well, what you need to do is change this startup here to just say add MVC, and then let's enable multi-tenancy by logging with tenants.
That's how you do it. And that's in the web application startup, and add multi-tenancy.
Now I need to define somewhere what tenants I want to use. And to do that, I have
in the app settings
file ready here. I will take that.
Now I'm curious
and
how that's gonna look
overwrite
like.
the one.
Hopefully not that big,
This one.
so I have to type
Yes,
it.
this is the one. App settings, replace. So what's the difference? In this file, I have a new section OrchardCore with 3 tenants.
Oh no. Okay, but that looks doable. Yes. Logging, blah 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 blah, allowed hosts. I'll put it here and start writing here. Check.
I have a new section on
I see. That's cool.
OrchardCore with 3 tenants.
Running now be okay, that wasn't
My default
much.
tenant, which is the one that was created before that I was showing you all the time. And I want a tenant for my customer A and tenant for my customer B. And inside this section, what do I say is that this tenant is running, because I could also disable every customer or each customer. I could also say, this is the domain that is mapped to. This is the URL prefix
Although it's
that
a
I
bit
want
weird
to
that it's
use.
contained
In
in
this
the app
case, my
settings, isn't
slash
it?
will be the default tenant.
Would like
These
to have
are
this
the default features I
separate
want my
config
tenant to
file.
have. So the default site won't have any feature. And I can also add custom settings for each tenant, like connection strings, the color of the layout, things like that.
I'm sure that's possible.
So if I look at my customer A, it has a URL prefix, which will be the base path
Did I
that I
write
will
everything
have in the URL
correct?
to target this customer A. This is the same as if you use in WordPress.com your own thing. And then here, customer B. So if I run that, first I will have to change the layouts. One sec. So that's here.
We don't have an API though. You need to choose yet.
Where am I? Web application. Pages shared. Okay. Replace.
Oh, he's cheating.
Because I want a layout that works for everyone, every tenant. So I'm at the default tenant, but if I do customer.
Interesting. How do you change tenants?
A. I also have a site.
How the fuck does that work? So this is the web app pages index. Hello world. Where's the route? How does the routing work? Default.
Oh, I need to rebuild. It's just the asset it doesn't find. So I can access the customer A or the customer B side. I will rebuild, think it works. And you can see here the customer B has access to e-commerce and web API, but customer A has only access to e-commerce. So if I run it, if I do customer A / e-commerce, it works. Customer B / e-commerce works also. But if I do weather forecast, which is coming from a different module, customer B has it, but customer A doesn't have it.
That's cool.
So I can customize every feature for each tenant. And this is how you do multi-tenancy in OrchardCore. This slide.
But that's not all of it.
And that's the last demo I have. So I encourage you to go and see our website, orchardproject.net, our source code on GitHub. We have also forums and documentations on my Twitter. And if you want to see a real usage of multi-tenancy that looks like WordPress.com, we made a site that does exactly that. It's a modular application, which is software as a service. You type an email, like my email, you type a site name, and you choose what kind of website you want. And this site will create a tenant inside itself. And I created one just before, so you see it's tryOrchard.net, try.orchardproject.net. And if I go here, I got a link right before. It generated a URL prefix randomly for you. And now I have the site under the same domain. And there are currently hundreds or thousands of sites, tenants, under this same deployment. So that's a good example of how you can reuse this multi-tenancy to make a software as a service application that will create tenants dynamically without any user interaction.
Cool. So you ready to switch over to questions?
I'm ready.
Oh.
Yes. So the default experience, which is a service, is to load the tenants from a file. But in the example I just showed you, the tenants are stored inside of a file also in this case actually, but dynamically they will be saved outside of the app settings, but a custom JSON document that will store it. And we have other providers that can store in Azure Blob Storage or the database. That's the idea.
Cool.
That's what I
And the
want.
next question. So what happens if you have a module named the same as a controller action?
There might be conflicts, and so that's why I also explained that if you find conflicts, then you have to solve the conflicts. And from your host API here, maybe I don't, but there is an access to prevent by the module.
Mic like this, since we only have the one. All right, so I wonder if these modules can be deployed separately from the main application.
Nope. You can't with OrchardCore framework. By design, we didn't want to allow that because we tried, it's very complex. The issue being that if modules are dynamically loaded, it might break your site.
Mm-hmm.
And also it doesn't match with the idea of deploying your service on different nodes. Because you have, when you install dynamically a module, you will have to do that on all the nodes of your cloud. And that's hard to do because only one server will get the request to install a module. So our suggestion is to test locally, to build locally, and then to deploy on every node. So we don't do dynamic loading of modules.
Makes it simple.
All right, next question. What is the difference between a module and a project? I think some people were a little bit unclear on the terminology.
Okay, so the module is a geological concept which is represented by a project. So a project that references the module's target, we call it a module. A module is a project.
Okay, good to know.
And actually a module can contain multiple features. So you can split inside a module, which will be an assembly or package. You can split different features and create a module.
Before we switch over to our next speaker, is security handled from the orchestrator module, or is it independent for each module?
It's from the host application per tenant. So each tenant will define its own security, like its own authentication, its own authorization.
That's what I want to know.
And you can have different ones. So you could have it at the host level because it could be a middleware that acts before the OrchardCore middleware, because at that point there will be a fork that will
so there is there's this pattern from Microsoft. They have a catalog. So basically, those tenants will be stored in a database called catalog, and there they should be able to distribute. From there, you can let me think about this. Have some key which links to the identities for the tenant.
Every tenant to its own set of middleware. So every tenant can have their own set of middleware for security. Or you can have the middleware defined before Orchard, so that you have a single middleware pipeline to define the security.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, Sebastian. Next up, we have Robert talking about cryptography 101 with.
Okay, so I'll make a break and come back later. Bye bye.